Hi, my name is Lin Nguyen, and in this video I'll be going over how to create the solid knee system along with the set-driven key for the feet using My 2012. This is an updated version based off the 2011 video, just doing it in 2012 so my students don't get confused in their classes. So here it is, our character. I'm going to my side view and I'm going to start creating the leg. It's like in the previous video I went over how to create the basic skeleton. We're just breaking it down, going in great detail, going into each part of the body and doing the enhanced version of each of the parts. This one does not go to the IKFQ blending for the leg, it's just showing the solid knee system along with the leg. So first off, let's talk about the solid knee. What is it exactly? Why not just use pole vectors? And it's just another set system to use. So here it is. I'm going to create with the joints. I'm going to reset my tool here, again with the same settings. I go through with X, Y, and Z, it's going to compensate off, and I'm setting these to such settings so that way when I take it over to another program and export as an FBX so they all read it properly. So I'm going to zoom in and create each of these joints. I'm going to choose this to be where my hip joint's going to be at, my knee, my ankle, my ball. Again, I have that on the grid underneath the section for where my ball is supposed to bend. I'm going to press X and one more over here holding X. And just like I always do, go through and rename everything. Thigh joint, knee joint, ankle joint, ball joint, and toe joint. So let's illustrate the problem first. I'm going to use an IK handle here, double click on this, use an IKRP from the hip or the thigh to the ankle. I'm going to use the same one for these other ones. So I'm pressing G to repeat. And I'll go through and I'll rename these also. Ankle, IK, ball, IK, and toe, IK. Okay. So, as before, I used the curve and created a foot controller. I'm going to do the same thing this time. And I'm going to move this pivot where I think it should go. I'm going to freeze my transforms. I'm going to call this FootCon. Alright. And before I also selected my IKs, then Shift selected my ring, went to Edit, Parent, and it all worked nice and dandy, but there's still a problem that we run into. If I go in here and move it around, this works fine until I move it to a certain location and the knee breaks and flips and goes the opposite direction. So one of the fixes people had was they created something called a pole vector constraint that has an object that I use to control the position of the knee. So I'm going to go in and create that. I'm going to turn off my grid because it's hard to see things. I'm going to use a ring here. I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to snap it to my knee. Move it forward. I'm going to shape this out a bit. So I'm going to go to my control vertex. Select these two. Snap it inside. Pull these back. Okay. I'm going to freeze my transforms. I'm going to call this KneeCon. So this here is going to be our pole vector, where we select and shift click this, go to constraint, pole vector, and this allows me to move my knee around like so. The problem with the setup is that still doesn't exactly fix our knee flipping issue. If I move it to a certain location, the knee still flips, and you're forced to take the controller and move it to the opposite direction. And that I just don't like counter animating, but it's fine if you use it. I just personally don't like using this so much. So the system I'm going to create will not allow the knee to flip the opposite direction. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to get rid of it. And when you get rid of that, the pull vector goes along with it. I can also go to my hypergraph hierarchy to make sure if it's there at all anymore. And like I said, it's not there anymore, it's gone. So we're good. So what do I do to fix this? I'm going to select my controller, go to Modify, Add Attribute, and I'm going to create controllers that help me fix that issue. One's going to be called the knee twist. I'm going to keep every single thing at default. I'm going to make another one called knee compensate. Again, everything at default. And I have those added to my foot controller. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my IK handle for my ankle here. And I'm going to go look at some of my attributes. I pull vector X, Y, and Z. And right now my green line that you can't really see in there, if I twist this, you see that green point right there is pointed forward, meaning whenever I move this around in a weird angle, it's going to have this knee flip the opposite direction. So what I want to do is put that point on the side. So if it's going to flip anywhere, it's going to flip side to side, which we're not going to have our knee actually face too much of. So the chances of it flipping the wrong direction is slimmed down drastically. So let's set this to 1, 0, and 0. And that puts our green point here, if you look at it, to the side, limiting any issue we might have that's flipping. If I take this and just turn it 90 real quick, we can test it out. I'm going to my side view here. If I just move this, all is good. But the problem with it is animating it, having to click on the IK handle all the time and animating with that twist attribute is kind of a pain. So what I do is I created these two attributes here to control it. One to rotate at 90 and the other to add on top of the 90 to rotate back and forth. So go to Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. Move that to open. Here it is. For those who are always curious why the first time it takes so long to load is because it needs to load all the libraries in order for the Hypershade to open. So with that, I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to select my IK handle, shift click my controller. Inside, I'll go to Graph, add selected to Graph, and I'll see both of them right in here. I'll move my ankle IK on the side and my foot controller on the side. So I mentioned earlier that we need to add them together. So on the side here, if I go to Utilities, I'll find that there is one called a plus minus average. Let me just increase this so it's easier for everyone to see. The plus minus average node. I'm going to click on this, and it pops up inside. If by chance your plus minus average node does not show up in here, you can go to Utilities and you'll find it right inside, and you can middle mouse drag that down. So that being said, I'm going to connect these together. I'm going to right click in this area, knee compensate, right click in here, plug it in, and I'm going to do the other one. It doesn't really matter what order you plug this in, as long as you plug them in. So if I double click on this node, you'll see that this is set to sum. There's subtracting average. We want to keep it at sum. And I'm going to take the output 1D into the input twist of the IK. And with that, if I go here and go to my channel editor, I can set my knee compensate now to 90 and use my knee twist going back and forth. The problem we now have though is if I mouse over to the right, knee points to the left and vice versa is the opposite. And I personally don't like that. That really depends on you really though. I don't like it, so I like to go fix it. So I go back in here, I grab a multiply divide node, and I place it right in between. In order to get a an opposite value, you just simply take whatever value you have, multiply it by -1. So I'm going to right click, output 1D here, right click in here, input 1x. And inside here, I'm going to take this and type in a negative value for 2x. This will take whatever number I plug inside and make it the opposite. So I'm going to output on x, plug it into the ankle IK, twist, which overrides what I currently have. That also makes my knee point the wrong direction, so I'm going to select my foot controller here and type in a -90 instead. And this time though, for knee twist, if I middle mouse left or right, it goes the correct direction that I want. Alright, now that works fine, but I also want to add the set-driven key setup to create the foot roll. I also need to do knee twist and all these other little things like toe swivel, toe tap, and whatnot. But just for this video, I'm just going to cover the foot roll. And the rest of you guys can probably figure out once you can figure out the foot roll the first time. So I'm going to go into the side view now. Here it is. I'm going to turn off my model and create the inverse joints. So I'm going to click on animation, joint tool, same settings, and I'm going to place this joint where I think the heel should be. If I look at that, heel somewhere around here. I'm going to hold X and just click it right there. Hold V, click, and vertex snap all of that. So again, notice that vertex snap was on, so you can click across for all of these. I'm going to go in here now, rename this. Call this inverse heel joint, inverse toe joint, inverse ball joint, and inverse ankle joint. Or perspective view. I'm going to go in here now, and I'm going to go to my hypergraph hierarchy. This lets me see things a lot easier, and what I want to do is parent these across to these inverse joints over here. So I'm going to middle mouse drag and drop my ankle into my inverse ankle joint, my ball underneath my inverse ball joint, and my toe underneath the inverse toe joint. From here I'm going to take my inverse heel joint and put that underneath the foot con. So they're all under one hierarchy. If I look at this now, this allows me to rotate and control my joints from the inverse joints. This is quite convenient. And go in here, move this however I want. It's all controlled by the hierarchy. Okay, cool. So what exactly is a foot roll? I'm going to illustrate it using Photoshop and attempt to draw it with my mouse. So let's open Photoshop here. I'm going to File, New. And it doesn't really matter what size I choose. Okay. And I'm just going to zoom up to max. And create a new layer. I'm going to draw my little pictures in here. So right now, our foot looks kind of like, let me make this a little bit larger. Looks kind of like this. At least our inverse joints do. This is based off our inverse joints in here. So what I'm paying attention to is just this set of joints. Going here, back, and up. Remember, these are the ones that control the foot, okay? So when I rotate something up like so, the foot isn't being stretched. Not at all. This is controlling the actual foot or feet joints inside the rig, and it's not really stretching the foot. So make sure you realize that. If you don't, it might get confusing when you look at my drawings. So I'm back in Photoshop here, and we're going to create a attribute that controls how this animates. So here we go. I'm going to create a little timeline. Actually, I'm going to put the little timeline on another layer. just so it's a little bit easier to work with. So here's my little timeline. And I'm going to divide this up to several little tick marks. So that one right there, I'll call the 0. A line over here, that's positive 5. Another line over here, I'll go this negative 5. A little bit further, I call it negative 10. Alright. Yes, I know the writing is horrible. I'm just using my mouse, so bear with me. Go back down here to select this layer, and I'm going to shrink the foot down just a bit. It's fairly large. And there's our foot. Okay. And this is what I'm going to call our default keyframe. This is at rest, normal, it's at 0. At 5, I want our foot to rotate up. And at negative 5, I want the ball to rotate up. And at negative 10, I want the toe to rotate up. Like so. So you can see what I'm trying to illustrate right here. Let me erase some of that. So the idea is I'm going to have the animation for the foot to do something like this. So it kind of works so it can walk. Again, that's not the foot being stretched. Just pay attention to the top section of this. Look at this area up here, and you can tell how the foot will actually rotate, okay? What we're doing is we're going to animate the actual inverse foot joints here so that it'll control our real foot joints to do this walking animation that we want. So let's get right into it. So with that being said, I'm going to unhide everything. There they are. I'm going to hide the foot here. That means I need to add another attribute to my foot controller. So it's the foot controller, not any other joint. The foot controller, modify, add attribute. I'm going to call this foot roll. And if I look back in my Photoshop file, my lowest value is a negative 10 and my highest value is a 5. And my resting point is at 0. So that means I'm going to go in here, type a negative 10. Maximum of 5. Default at 0. Again, these numbers are up to you. So if you want more animation frames between each keyframe to increase this value here, add, and now a foot roll attribute inside. I'm going to go now to animate, set driven key, set. In this case, my controller here will be my driver. So I'm going to load that as my driver. And my driven are the joints that's being animated. For this case, it's going to be the inverse heel, inverse toe, inverse ball. If you find them hard to select, just go into your hierarchy. Just grab these 3 right there. Inverse heel, toe, and ball. Load them as a driven. We'll be rotating these on rotate Z. So I'm going to use foot roll right here and these 3 on rotate Z. And I'm going to hit key. When foot roll is at 5, I want to make sure that my inverse heel rotates up. How high? Again, that's entirely up to you. Whatever value you want. I'll use negative 60 this time. and I'm just keying on the inverse heel, so I'm going to key it right there. Right here, I'm going to go set my foot roll to -5, and I'm going to key the ball rotating up by how much? Again, that's your call. I'll use 35, and I want to key my ball, but I also want to make sure the toe stays in place. So you look back in here, your toe doesn't move. Your toe's the same location as it is right there, so we need to key the toe. So click on the toe, and I'll key that. And I'm going to rotate this again, and go to -10. And my inverse toe this time will rotate up. How far? Again, that's your choice. I'll use 50. Now key that. If I go here now and play my foot roll, I get this whole animation. What a lot of people don't know or realize is that all of these things that have animations all have their own graph editor built in. So if I click on this, or actually I can go inside and click every one of my special joints over here. If I open my Hypershade, I can click Input-Output Connections, and I can see all the graphs right here. If I double click on any of these graphs, it'll allow me to go in and just change the time and value anywhere I want for any of these. Not just that, I can click on all of these and go to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor, and you'll find that you have full graph editor for all of these. Right now, every single thing is easing in and easing out. If you don't want the ease in, ease out, you can simply select everything, just clamp it so they go straight to each other. Okay, that's entirely up to you. You can go inside, play with any of these things. You can set your curves to non-weighted or weighted tangents, which allow you to go through and really control a lot of the settings inside. So I do recommend checking all that out. It's very powerful, but now at least I can control exactly how my animation flows. If I want rigid, it's totally rigid now. There's no easing in, no easing out. It's all natural across. Alright, I hope that was useful for you. And that concludes the solid knee with the set-driven key inverse foot roll with the inverse foot setup.